Welcome everybody to this final session of the 2017 AgrAbility Virtual National Training Workshop. Today we have a special treat, virtual unconferencing. And for those that are not sure what that is, we will talk a little bit about it. Carla Wilhite from University of New Mexico and from days gone by as an AgrAbility staff member will be leading the discussion on seeding issues in agricultural machinery. So before we start, my typical spiel about some of the basic instructions, and then talk a little bit more specifically about unconferencing. So it's a little different window than we've been using. Hopefully you've been able to connect either through a phone or through your computer. We do want you to have the capacity to speak if possible, since it is a discussion today. So you can go to the audio menu at the top and check your connection and your settings. So if you're having any issues, please feel free to do that. Closed captions, if you need them today, are a little bit different than the previous webinars in this conference. You do need to open a separate browser window, but if you go to the chat option on the right side of your screen, right at the top of that chat is a URL for the captioning. So instead of the captioning appearing within the WebEx framework, it's going to be in a separate browser. So my recommendation is if you need that, you configure your screen so that you can see both the WebEx and the captioning at the same time. You can expand or contract any of the options on the right, and you may want to do that if you're going to look at the chat. Since chat may be used significantly today during the discussion, you may need to minimize the participant window by clicking on the arrow or minimizing something else, and so that you can better see that chat discussion. You can also expand or contract the entire right side column by dragging and clicking and dragging on the border between that and the presentation window. We will go ahead and do our survey questions as we normally do, and we are again recording and archiving on the website under online training. If you have any problems, use the chat window for technical issues, or feel free to email me, jonesp@purdue.edu. Okay. It looks like most of our crowd are AgrAbility folks or people that have participated in the webinars before, so I won't give the typical what is AgrAbility summary, but obviously if you want more information, the website www.agrability.org is the place to go for that. Unconferencing is something we started at the National Training Workshop, it's been almost 8 years ago. And the concept here is that we can get a lot more input sometimes if we consider the audience to be experts and not just the person giving a presentation. So the basic principle is that the sum of the expertise of the people in the audience is greater than the sum of the expertise of the people on stage or the person giving the presentation in the case of a webinar. So what we're going to be engaging in is a structured discussion, and hopefully everybody will be able to contribute and also receive some benefit. So our discussion leader, who is Carla today, will provide an overview and provide some direction for the conversation today, but we are relying on you to provide us with content, with your feedback, with your experiences, with your questions, and we'll take that, and if we don't resolve some of those things today, that's more fodder for the future to look into things we need to explore. So if you don't have specific experiences or comments to add and you have questions, please feel free to include those as we can continue to explore the topic in the future. And I know Carla is interested in doing that. So how do you participate? Again, verbally, you can use your web microphone or your phone connection. We do ask that if you're not going to be talking, that you keep your line muted. And there's a little graphic on the screen, and hopefully you're able to see that also in the participant list. You have to have the participant list open to see this, but there should be a it's either a circle. I think this shows a rectangle, but should be a circle with an X through the microphone to show in red if you're muted. And all you have to do is click on that to unmute yourself. We'll rely on you guys to take care of that. If there's too much background noise, I may need to mute everybody just to make it more understandable for people, and then you would have to unmute again. But if you are connected to the audio, hopefully you will be able to participate simply by unmuting your microphone or your phone line. The other way, the main way, is to use the chat to type out questions or comments. So make sure when you do that, you click send, and you can send that to everyone. There may be one other option, but unless you want to specifically say something directly to me, just go ahead and send that to everyone. We will have a whiteboard that we're going to be taking notes on after Carla finishes introducing the topic today. So I think that's all I need to talk about. And now I'm going to turn things over to Carla. I need to find her on my list as she is bumped down. And I'm going to make her the presenter. I'm going to go ahead and mute my microphone and take my camera off for now. And Carla can take it away.
All right. Thank you, Paul. As I look down the list of participants, I see quite a few people that I know and respect. Kirk, Rod, got Joetta. And then I was just really pleased to see that Brad Marsh is with us. So I know that we're going to have a good discussion and that you guys are interested in this problem in the same way that I was as an AgrAbility's staff person. And that's, we have great technology to enable people to get into a tractor using like lifts from Life Essentials and so forth. But once they're on the seat, we're kind of flying blind. And I've been doing some research in the last 3 years, and then just some research with students in some years before that to try and start getting a toehold on the problems that we're seeing in seating and what are some of the interventions that we're doing, you know, and what can we do better and more effectively. And what I'd really like to wind up with is someday that we have a smart seat in a tractor that can accommodate all kinds of users, both those who have no disabilities but may have different ergonomics, as well as people with disabilities. So one of the things I just want to show you right off the bat, this is a typical farmer, Antonio. He is a New Mexico farmer, and we collected this data back in September of 2015. And Antonio was 73 years old, kind of average build and weight. He didn't have any major health issues, and that day he was wearing just jeans and boots. And we were doing some 5-minute trials, just trying to get our procedures down for taking the pressure mapping system out into the tractor environment and away from the laboratory. And part of the trial was on pavement, and part of it was in a typical kind of pasture, so a little bumpier ride for Antonio. And this first slide that I'm showing you is what Antonio looked like on the grammar seat in his New Holland tractor. And I don't know if you're like me, but when I look at that image, I see a very hard contour. I can actually see the seams in the seat where it's kind of divided in the center and into quadrants. And he's only been sitting on this seat for about 15 minutes, and already you can see under his left bottom cheek, he's got that really red area of pressure. And we can't really see the pressure legend, although it popped up for a minute. But this seat didn't look good to me, and it didn't look good 5 minutes later. In fact, we can see that things have increased in terms of problems. We did a quick pressure relief, and that'll be the next slide. And after the pressure relief, we see that some of our redness has gone away, although we still have some problems right underneath the bony areas of his bottom. So, and still have those really hard contours. So the next thing that we did, we put him on just a 2-inch piece of foam. So just adding a little bit more cush. And you can actually see now we have a softer contour of his bottom on the seat. And this is 15 minutes after he sat down. And then we see him 5 minutes later, and again some areas of concern have popped up under both sit bones of his pelvis. And then after he does the pressure relief, we still see a couple of issues with high areas of pressure underneath those bony areas. So then we put him on the low profile Rojo cushion. And, you know, when I was working out in the field with AgrAbility folks who had had spinal cord injuries or some kind of paralysis, usually throwing a low profile air cushion was one of the kind of go-to solutions. And I know that, Rod, you've used this as a solution as well. So here you can see Antonio, he's on the low profile. This is 5 minutes into the procedure, which is the settle time for a Rojo cushion. And you can already see that we have a lot softer edges along all the contours. We're not seeing very much area of redness or yellow pressures or green pressures, which are higher than the blues. So here, 5 minutes later, we're starting to see a little bit of artifacts of high pressure where he's been getting, you know, ground forces coming up through the seat. But it still looks better than that first image of the grammar seat. And then after pressure relief, it looks just about the same. And then we did the same thing. We put him on the even higher mid-profile Rojo. With the problem that you can see here, if you're seeing the images, we developed a wrinkle after he got away from us and was driving around in the field. So that artifact in the data caused us to have to throw this out. But you can actually see that the contours in the areas where the wrinkle is not, we've again accomplished having softer contours of ridges of high pressure. And then this is the high profile Rojo. And the reason that you see some of those white areas is we threw out all the anything under 5 millimeters of mercury, so 0 to 5 millimeters of mercury we threw out, because sometimes that's just signal noise. But you can actually see now Antonio looks like he's pretty immersed into this seating surface. There aren't any ridges of red or yellow or green. After 5 minutes, we get a little bit, and then, whoops, this one's actually 5 minutes. Something's still kind of nagging us underneath that right cheek. And then after pressure relief, whoops, it looks like I missed that one. But in any case, I think you can see from beginning to end changes in benefit. So I'm going back to the original, just the grammar tractor seat, the contour seat that's in the tractor. And each of the other images, except for the one with the wrinkle, are an improvement in the situation. And of course, this research that I've been doing is just about the seat itself, but we also know that there are other problems in the seating situation, which is a great reason to have a conversation with everybody. So I think if you guys are ready, I'm ready to go to the whiteboard and just see if we can talk about the problems that you are seeing as frontline folks or users of tractors in terms of seating. So I think, all right, so the whiteboard has been brought up. And I think one of the first questions that, again, that we should talk about are what are the problems in seating that frontline AgrAbility's staff are seeing during farm visits? And I just opened this up to the call-in experts.
Again, feel free to unmute your line, or you can add comments into the chat if you prefer that.
This is Kirk. Can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Okay. I guess one of the first things we run into is that it's not seen as an initial priority because of other issues, and it's one of those things that is hidden, and another one of those things that people don't tend to talk about, and yet it's obviously an ongoing problem, especially when other issues are involved, and getting around to talking about it, I guess, is a challenge.
Thanks, Kirk. I know that some of the problems that I would see in terms of the seating situation, and I know that several of you have as well, is that sometimes the condition of the existing tractor seating you find is pretty ratted out. The foam is way past its prime in terms of providing support to the person's back and bottom. The material is ripped or torn, or the vinyl has worn down. Yeah, Abby, I agree. I see a lot of seats that are worn down to the metal, then covered with a feed bag. I've seen that as well.
So Carla and Kirk, are you, to clarify, are we talking about, is it more of a practical issue, or is it an issue of personal privacy? Do people just not want to talk about maybe issues that they're having, that they're just not comfortable in that realm? Or is it more just, I've got other things I need to worry about?
Well, I guess I see it that there are other things to worry about, but also I think it's a bit more uncomfortable, both physically and otherwise, to talk about. And there are other issues that seem to be more pressing, although obviously I'm sorry about all the puns, but I think it is a very pressing issue that has to be addressed, but not one that they necessarily want to go to.
I know in my AgrAbility work, most wheelchair users are really used to talking about their seating situation, especially in their wheelchairs. They know that they're at risk for decubitus ulcers. You've got, folks like Ed Bell, who has had very first-hand experience on what it's like to have a severe decubitus ulcer that kept him out of the farm workplace for almost a year. I think you're right in the Kirk in the sense that other priorities are more important. For one thing, getting into the tractor itself is a big priority.
And I guess, yeah, if we're talking specifically about people who are using wheelchairs and are already tuned into that, that's a different story. I guess I'm talking about more in generally speaking, just with clients, it's not something they necessarily think about. But yeah, I think you're right. People who are already in wheelchairs are also already tuned into that and are very conscientious or very conscious of the fact that what happens if they have very inappropriate seating.
Yeah. And Brad Marsh is saying also seat suspension mechanisms are worn out and need replacing in addition to the seats. Yeah, I've used Knm fairly frequently to do seat replacements and add air suspension. And that's not cheap, but it's also an ounce of prevention. And then I still have to make that decision about, well, what other cushion or support should I add, if anything, to the seating system? Because once you do that, you're changing a lot of things in terms of reaching controls, being able to put your feet with stability on the floor. And, Rod, I know that you have a really tough story to tell about that one.
This is Sean. So I read your paper that you published here recently on seating, and we saw that as you go thicker, that we reduce the forces applied on the body. But what about the negative attributes of losing stability, because you're basically sitting on a large marshmallow as you're going through the field?
And that's an apt description. I mean, the air cushion looks like a good solution until you're out there riding around on it. And most of the users that I'm working with say that the high profile, despite whatever advantage it looks like it's giving, causes them to feel like they're not stable. So
able to hear me?
Yeah, Brad.
No, this is Rod.
Hey, Rod.
I'm having some buffering problems with my computer, so I'll just have to kind of trudge through this on my. Probably about 5 years ago, we ran into a case where a paraplegic a woman lift on her tractor. But in a discussion between her husband, build a platform on the floor, which didn't get done when.
Rod, you're breaking up a bit. Is there any way to use the phone?
Result. I'm on the phone.
Oh, okay.
Is that better?
I'm going to.
Quick.
Carla,
she was doing her. And which really at all, of course, emphasizes the of the tractor and leg length in considering that.
I'm going to try and fill in your story a little bit, Rod. They had a female with a spinal cord injury out working in her tractor. They didn't install the lift, etc. And she had added her wheelchair cushion to the top of the existing seat, and her feet didn't quite fit the floor. She was out and driving, I think, back to the farmstead when she had to hit the brakes, and she submarined right off the seat because her legs collapsed in front of her because they weren't stable on the floor, and she wound up with a fracture of the largest bone in your body, which is the femur, and had a pretty extensive recovery. Would you say that's about right, Rod?
That's correct, except she was just doing pressure releases at the time.
Oh, my goodness.
She was in a grain car waiting for her husband in the combine, and she was doing pressure releases.
And Debbie is saying, with farm culture, there is a way of being that relates to stoicism, which may impede addressing seating options. I'm wondering, Debbie, if you could say a little bit more about that in the text.
Well, I'll just phone in if you can hear me okay. I'm not an AgrAbility staff, but I am a vocational rehab staff member as well as evaluator for assistive technology, in part for assistive technology. And I can just relate to what I know personally of farm culture with my family members. You know, it's work, you know, to can't see in the morning to can't see at night. So, you know, they have a job to do, and their feet hurting them, you know, so to speak, you know, having numbness or what have you, pressure or what have you. They're thinking of a whole lot of other things, and they're just working through that. So it may kind of go back to prioritizing, but it's almost, I'm thinking, may even be almost unconscious that they're thinking about other things as far as getting the crop in before the rain comes, you know, what have you, versus worrying about, you know, their rear end getting numb. So, you know, it's almost like going back to talking, you know, having a talking point and getting them to understand, you know, what the benefit would be. But that's just it. I think they're on such a subconscious level as far as operating and just getting that job done that they have to get done, you know, working against Mother Nature, what have you, that they may not be thinking so much as far as how this prolonged stress could impact them as far as their ability to get out and work.
Debbie, do you think that if a farm producer could just purchase a machine where smart features were available in terms of comfort and seat immersion properties and everything, that it would be less of an issue if it was just something standard in the tractor seating environment?
I think that'd be a great first step, but I'm thinking that's going to be for the younger farmers, and hopefully these folks that are able to purchase these high-dollar tractors, hopefully they're going to have young kids or grandkids that would be able to teach them how to operate it, because I don't think they're going to sit down with a manual. And I know you're going to have techs to come out or folks like us to come out, but I personally would have to learn, you know, what to do and what settings would work best. So I think that would be a great first option, but I think maybe not for the generation that's out there now. In one of the webinars, they said the average age was folks 57 and older. So maybe folks more around 57, but folks that are in their 60s and 70s, I don't know if they would be able to do all the settings. Personally, that's just my thoughts.
Good point.
Hey, Carla, this is Sean.
Yes.
Maybe this would be a good time to talk about some of the industry products out there. Like Deere does the active seat, and it takes about 80% of the bumps out of a typical field. And so I have this in some of my tractors, and it's amazing if you spend all day in a tractor. Have you done any pressure-sensitive testing on the cushions of active seats?
I did an early look at an active seat, and just not looking at its ability to take out all those micro forces, which I think is great, but just looking at the seat materials itself. And, the active seat, I think, does a great job. It's been a major achievement in terms of affecting forces. There's still the contact area between the person's body and that seat, which represents kind of a microclimate, and contact force between the body and the seat materials, which is still just basically automotive foam and cloth or vinyl covering. So you've got this incredible suspension, and you've got $100 worth of real poor foam and material on top of it. I'd be interested to know, Brad or Joetta, if you have anything to add before we move on. And Eileen from Tennessee. Oh, Tess. Yeah, Tess McKeel down at the bottom. Those are folks I know.
Carla, just in talking about the issue you just raised about the seat material, has there been any exploration of, instead of putting a cushion on top of that as to somehow replace what's there, would that have any potential benefit?
Absolutely. I absolutely think that replacing the seat materials rather than trying to add aftermarket materials is a better solution. But we'd also want to be able to design for, at least 99% or 100% would be beautiful of the kinds of users, not just people with spinal cord injuries, but older farmers, women, people of all sizes. We also know that, and I know that Dr. Field has actually talked about this as well. It's just that there are a lot of body shapes that are getting quite large, and tractor seats, agricultural machinery seats are not designed for, people with bariatric sizes. So there are new materials, I think, that are being developed for wheelchair seating, and one of them, honeycomb type materials or gels and so forth. But whatever we're going to put in the tractor, it needs to be durable. It needs to last a long time. It needs to accommodate a lot of different shapes. So definitely something with a lot of adjustability and the ability to accommodate a lot of different body types. And Brad, I think, did you add a comment? So it might be helpful to look at seat adjustments in general. I've worked with some farmers who did not change settings when others used the equipment. Yeah, I think that also speaks to what Debbie says. You're just used to going in and going, and you don't take the time to make adjustments. But I agree, Brad. I think that seat adjustments, and that's kind of where I'm picking up on that phrase of a smart seat, almost like automotive seats. You have that ability to change the lumbar support. The seats have heating and air conditioning. There are several different variables that you could change in that automotive seat. I would like to even tilting in space. That would be great for some of our users with paralysis because they could do their pressure relief. But I know that there's also that constraint in the design space for fitting in small motors and so forth that would operate all that smartness. but I definitely think that that's got to be part of the solution here.
Rod, it looks like your hand is raised. I'm not sure if you had another comment you wanted to make or not. I'm just checking in with you.
Carla, you just brought up a really good point of the automotive industry, and we typically do look at a lot of what things they do and then try to bring over to ag. And one thing I've noticed in the automotive industry is some luxury cars are actually messing or adjusting air pressures to change basically the pressure points as you drive, so you can keep your back and bottom from getting tired on like a longer road trip. Is that kind of what you're alluding to and what you'd see in a smart seat for a tractor?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think a smart seat would have all of those advantages, and that it would make very minute adjustments as you're driving to create redistribution of your seated pressure, which is going to reduce your fatigue and your discomfort, and as Debbie aptly said, your numb bottom. So maybe we should move we're burning daylight. Let's talk about some of the interventions that are already being used to improve seating for some of our AgrAbility customers. I'd like to kind of hear from you guys about what things you're trying or have tried. I know that some of the interventions that I've tried using when I was working full-time with AgrAbility, definitely upgrading the seating whenever possible by purchasing a better quality seat and air suspension. So just thinking in terms of replacing or retrofitting.
Did have another comment from Debbie there. I'm not sure if you saw that, Carla.
Let me scroll down. Does Deere and other manufacturers have focus groups for design and include farmers and AT folks? That's a great question. If they don't, they should. From what I have been able to see, and I would love to visit John Deere or Grammar or Sears Seating, but I do know that they have testing rigs that they use to simulate a person sitting on the seat and kind of run it through some dynamic forces just to see if the seat meets the engineering standards that have been set out for agricultural machinery seating. Does anyone, Abby Spackman is saying, does anyone have a brochure or a handout created to educate farmers and farm families about seating? The one document that I do know of was written by Therese Wilcombe some years ago, and she sort of took on the issue of seating in tractors for people with disabilities, especially with spinal cord injuries. And she talked about that some people may need additional seating supports. They might need lateral support to support their trunk. They might need additional a different kind of seat belt. She talked about different kind of padding and so forth to protect legs and even headrests, using just all kinds of different ideas that were being pulled kind of from the wheelchair seating industry. But I haven't seen anything newer than that. And Abby, that is definitely something that I think we need to have for the AgrAbility customer. What other interventions have folks done that I haven't mentioned? We've talked about throwing the low profile on for people with spinal cord injuries, but one of the feedbacks that they give me is they break them, they bust them in cold weather. They're stiff. You change even some elevation and it changes the properties of the cushion. So Brad is saying it's important to check the individual's body structure when evaluating seating. I evaluated a bus driver who had problems with new ergonomic seats that were installed. It turned out that the driver did not have any lumbar curve, and the new seats had a significant lumbar support built into the back. They swapped out the new seat for an older seat that had less lumbar support. Yeah, that it is exactly what we're talking about with ergonomics of difference. Not everybody does have the typical lumbar curve, and so that would cause quite a bit of discomfort. So being able to make that adjustable would have been probably a better design than just building it in for everybody. And then Amy Cooper, thanks Amy for this comment. We replace and retrofit, but also sometimes turn to a cushion meant to reduce vibration experienced when riding over uneven ground. The cushion is called an air hawk cushion. It's not perfect, but at least provides some relief. And the air hawk, I agree, is a good cushion. It's being used quite a bit in the trucking industry, and it is also a product from Roho that made the wheelchair cushions that I've been trying out. So thank you, Amy. And then from Dusty Franklin to everyone, as a farmer with a bad back and having older tractors, we put in the Knm air seats. The only thing that I think they could put more cushion in them, but they have helped me a lot. Thanks Dusty, I've also used those Knm seats, and it's just a major improvement in seating comfort for people. The seat that I used in my lab study was a Knm seat, and even though it's an improvement over a lot of the tractor seats, especially like the one described at the top of the hour with just the bare pan and the steel showing, but the Knm contour seat, the K1000, was still not as supportive to our users as when we added additional foam. So yes, adding a little extra cushion, or adding the air cushion that we use, the low profile air. So that would be something in the realm of like the Air Hawk.
I just entered a link in the chat. I did a quick Google search about Therese Wilcombe and tractor seating, and at least part of a presentation came up. I'm not sure exactly where it came from, but in case you're interested in checking that out, you can click on that. And I'm not sure where this was given or when.
This was, if it's the presentation I'm thinking of, it was given at an AgrAbility conference when the project was with the University of Wisconsin, and she had worked with Carrie Jones, who's an expert in wheelchair seating, and with Mark Novak from the University of Wisconsin. These are the folks that actually got me interested and inspired to try and work on this issue. So thanks for adding that, Paul. So it looks like many of us are using the same kind of interventions, adding cushioning, although we know that that can cause problems with stability, or replacing seats. Anything else that we haven't mentioned? Okay, so let's talk about how are you measuring whether the change that you've made is effective? I think it was an article by Hostens, who's done a lot of agricultural seeding studies with just typical tractor seeding issues. And one of the ways that they measured was seat comfort. So just having the person say, I feel more comfort. And Brad, yep, you and I, we've got mind meld. Brad Marsh is saying that self-report from individuals for increased comfort. And Abby is saying we also send surveys to ask how this changed pain levels, etc. I also think that is an excellent idea. This would probably be a higher level of outcome and maybe harder to obtain the data, but I'm wondering if there's any way of just for people, especially for our vulnerable users, people with spinal cord injuries, whether we might think in terms of have we reduced their risk for developing a decubitus ulcer? So how many months maybe they go without acquiring a decubitus ulcer? Debbie Tucker, consumer input, yes, but not necessarily on a Likert scale, okay? And an accounting of their experience to see if other areas were not thought of to measure. Did I say that correctly, Debbie?
Yes, I'm not a very good typist, not very fast anyhow, but what I was thinking of is in the talking, just like when you do clinical interviews for evaluation, just in the talking, that's when you find other barriers or what have you that you maybe didn't think of to measure. So, surveys are great, and, that would go into the research and justify, further studies and development, but just being able to ask them open-ended questions, just asking them to give an account as far as their experience. There may be other areas of study that would open up that haven't even been thought of.
Thank you. I appreciate that input. So far we have for measuring change the person's comfort, changes in pain level, reduction for risk of ulcer, any other good ideas?
would it make sense to try to survey? I mean, obviously we don't need more work, I guess, but doing a survey of, some of the clients we know in the States about these issues?
Yeah, I think so. And then Brad Marsh just added, it may be helpful to look at the seatbelt setup. Oh, absolutely. Just a poor fit of a seatbelt can perhaps cause more problems than it reduces. In fact, the seatbelt for somebody with a spinal cord injury in a dynamic environment like a tractor, I think about rubbing, friction, pressure points, and so forth, that the standard seatbelt in a tractor could be more of an injury mechanism than a help. So here's I'm going to just do this kind of impromptu, Paul, but what do we need? What's the perfect tractor seat? What would it look like? What features would it have? I know that for me, the perfect tractor seat is a holy grail. It would fit people of all sizes, or at least the majority of them. Women, men alike, large, small, people who are aging and have bony bottoms, and young people who have spinal cord injuries, and everything in between. I know you guys are thinking hard, so let us have it. Yeah. Let's see. Ooh, from Debbie. Readily available. This from Brad. Readily available, low cost, easily replaceable, customizable to users. I love that. When you talk about easily replaceable, I envisioned one time that, the tractor would come with just a fairly generic bottom and seat, and that you would actually have a customized form of your body that you could just Velcro in there and take off. You just carry it like a little suitcase. Allow controls to move along with the seated user. Oh, yeah. Somebody's saying not slippery. Sometimes tractors that do not have cabs have vinyl type materials that can become slippery or hot when sitting in the sun. Yes. Nancy Stork, adequate depth, adjustable arms. Thank you. Yes. Now you guys are cooking.
How does the issue of having controls for the tractor actually on the seat itself affect all this? Does that make it, beyond the realm of what we're able to adjust for? If we're talking about replacing things?
Mm-hmm. Well, like in the John Deere Active Seat, you have those armrests that actually have those integrated controls that are at your fingertips, and what's great about them is they're supporting your forearms, and you can just operate these with the touch of a finger. Those are nice, but I think you are right. They create a constraint for certainly width of seating. Debbie Tucker, bucket seating that is adjustable for secure seating. Yeah, bucket seating certainly has been the standard in automotive, and I do appreciate bucket seating that almost like the anti-gravity seating that we're seeing for homes, where you're getting the pressure off of the bottom and distributing that along part of the back as well. But I appreciate an automotive seat that tilts and adjusts not only just the back angle, but the seat angle. And somebody's saying rotational to allow for better visibility to the rear. That's absolutely essential. All right. Well, I think at this point I need to turn it back over to Paul. But what I will say, I hope that I've infected you with my problem, and that you will continue to be thinking about this and send me emails or information that you think would be helpful to me in my research as I'm moving forward. I've been talking to an engineer with the University of New Mexico about thinking about the problem of we need different materials, we need new materials that can help with seating. All right, so I'm going to turn it back over to you, Paul.
We did have one more comment that just came in from Abby. Abby, yeah. I don't know if you can see that.
Yes, from Abby. I know the focus here is on tractors, but does anyone have thoughts on seating in utility vehicles, specifically the bench seats versus bucket seats? And has anyone added cushions to UTV seats? Anybody have any input for Abby? I know that bench seats are easier to do a transfer to and from, but the downside to them is, well, you've got maybe less than 2 inches of foam, and it's just a flat seat with just a little bit of seating angle. And the bucket seats, maybe provide more comfort but are harder to transfer in and out of.
If you have comments, feel free to go ahead and type those in the chat window. I would like to go ahead and do our poll questions, and I think we had another response that we can talk about here in a minute. If you would stick around for just a second, we'd appreciate your input. We know we've got people from several different professional backgrounds, so if you could tell us, first of all, what your affiliation is, which category fits you best. I'll give you just a couple more seconds on that one. Looks like some people are still in progress. I'll go ahead and close that. Okay, quite a range there. Hopefully you can see that. Next question asks about the information that was shared today, and actually, you guys shared a lot of the information, so if you could just give your overall response on how things went. Appreciate that. This is actually only the second time we've done anything like virtual unconferencing, but I appreciated everybody's input. I think it was a valuable session. I think we would like to continue exploring this as an option. I'm going to close the poll now. Show the results. Okay. All right. Next question on the technology. How did it work for you today, especially in this kind of a different environment? If you had any specific comments or problems, if you could let us know in the chat window, that would be helpful too. Okay, I'm going to close this one again. We've got one more. And the results to that one. One more. Based on today's session, would you attend another session in this series? And as you know, there's no more for this particular web conference, but our webinar series will continue into the future. Okay, thank you for your response on that. Okay, before we leave, just we had at least one more comment from Brad. He says, I worked with a farmer, had a spinal cord injury. They installed a seat pan into a Kawasaki mule so that a Roho cushion could be installed. And that was related to the questions about utility vehicles.
My question back to Brad, did you feel like that was a good solution? Did it work the way that you guys expected it to? And while Brad's contemplating his answer, I'd just like to thank everybody for your assistance, for taking the time to have this conversation. And I look forward to doing future work and doing anything that we can to support our food growers.
Don't see a response yet from Brad on that, but feel free to stick around. I'll leave the, there we go. There's a response from Brad.
All right, Brad said, it worked well. I would have added a protective edge around the metal on the seat pan. All right, thank you. Good to know.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Carla, for leading the discussion today, and thanks to everybody that participated in our 3 days of webinars. So unless there are other comments or questions, I think we will sign off for now and hope to see you in the future.
Thanks, everybody.